getting a couple of responses that my voice is hard to hear. Is this better? Okay, I'll
Yes.
just hold it like this then. So my name's Troy. I'm one of the co-founders of Earthshot Labs, and I see Patrick on the call as well. And we are an open source data science community and community of activists, entrepreneurs, investors, software engineers, and generally enthusiastic people that care about planetary scale regeneration and using our talents to that effect. It's a group of sovereign individuals who really have a lot of fun collaborating with each other. And in that context, I'd like to introduce Gregory, one of the co-founders or founder of Regen Network. I actually don't know much about you, so I'd love you to do an intro on yourself, who will spend the next 15 minutes or so chatting about Regen Network and the decentralized finance and decision-making platform they developed. The reason we're having this conversation is because in the Regen ledger and in the Regen ledger, Earthshot Labs is considering or mutually considering being a stakeholder and supporting on governance and being able to help distribute wealth to stakeholders all around the world. So that's part of the context of this conversation. So if this is an area that you're really passionate about, please join the Earthshot Labs Slack channel afterward. We'll have a working group in developing a proposal for the foundation that is staking these coins. And so it's something that we're taking a lot of community voices around. So with that, Gregory, if you'd just like to hop in and share what you got.
Awesome. Thanks, Troy. Really fantastic to be here. I'm super grateful and excited to be with a bunch of activated humans doing amazing work on data science. It's definitely, there's a really serendipitous intersection between Regen Network and Earthshot Lab. So couldn't be more excited to be here. And hopefully I'll do it justice. I was just working on a little bit of a presentation beforehand, and hopefully I'll be able to sort of like land the elegance of, I think, what the opportunity is. So we'll see. You all can tell me how I do. So my background, so again, my name's Gregory. I grew up in Alaska, and I had the experience, the privilege growing up to work on every single side of the fishery in Alaska. And so that means I worked for the Watershed Forum, doing water quality sampling. I worked in the cannery. My first job was in a cannery, slime lining. I was a fisherman, all of the different angles of things. And that gave me this understanding of, and that particular fishery actually is considered to be one of the world's best, in quotes, natural resource management solutions, right? It's an example of the humans involved not just degrading the resource. And yet it was kind of crazy. And so something about that experience, I think, growing up has always had me thinking there has to be a way for humans to coordinate in a way that is not just doing less harm to the earth, but is actually regenerative, in which we're actually a keystone species of more thriving ecosystems. And my life path has really been meandering around that central theme. So I was a permaculture and agroecology designer. I work with smallholder farmers all over the world. I helped supply chain companies transition to regenerative agriculture. And through that life experience, my journey led me to believe that there needed to be systemic transformation, and that systemic transformation needed to include everyone on Earth, and somehow needed to be sourced from place and individual communities, and not be this top-down, just like meta one ring to rule them all sort of like vision. It really needed to be, how do we coordinate and uplift people to collaborate, and for indigenous people and farmers from around the world to just be empowered to steward and shift the economic dynamics. And so out of that, Regen Network was born. I'm a co-founder along with Christian Scheer and our friend Brecht. And and really many of the people on this call, Chiselle has been with us since basically day one as well, and our CTO. So I think it was really a community founding effort. So we've been working since 2017 to create a public ecological accounting system. And so we really feel like the ecological accounting and sort of the eco fintech infrastructure needs to be public first and foremost in order for ecological claims and sort of valuing natural capital to be done in a way that's transparent, that really benefits the real land stewards, and is not sort of speculative and disembodied in the way that oftentimes our financial system is working these days. And so towards that end, we recently launched Regen Ledger, which is a public proof of stake blockchain, which has a couple of core components. And now that I'm getting into the meat of things, I'll do a quick screen share here. So let me just hit share. And so here's my little fun meme. I hope you all enjoy it to start us off. So we really believe that we need to out-cooperate the competition, that we need to remove all friction from cooperation to be the way that things are moving. And that's why we're sort of open source, built in public, and we love that we've met Earthshot Labs. So we're really excited about this. Sort of zooming out, and I don't want to get too sucked into this because I have a short amount of time, but I just want to say we have a public blockchain. That's Regen Ledger. That interacts with digital monitoring and reporting and verification tools. I think some of those tools may be being built right now by Earthshot Labs. Other tools are being built by our friends at OpenTeam. We're building our own tools. These digital monitoring, reporting, and verification tools allow people to essentially register data and claims about ecological state as the foundation for either transferable or non-transferable assets. And then on top of all that is a registry where you do things like define, in the carbon markets, permanence, additionality, leakage, the verification methodologies that are possible. And so all of these things are governed by a community. So we're sort of taking a pretty radically different approach than the other institutions that you see listed here. Instead of sort of a centralized 501c3 or other entity, and we want to include all of them into the system. We actually want a fully sort of democratically governed system in which, for instance, an indigenous tribe in the Amazon can whitelist and curate and create and publish their own methodologies for carbon credits, for instance, which is something that we feel pretty strongly about and are doing some work on. So I'm going to sort of skip through some of this stuff, but needless to say, there's a lot of things happening on top of this blockchain. There's a registry system that allows people to sort of mint and retire credits, carbon credits, for instance. And there are tools for people. And some of this is built, much of it is in process, right? So monitoring, reporting, and verification, just sort of getting into this. I think this is where we have an enormous intersection with Earthshot Labs. We're really excited about where we can work together to innovate and move more quickly as a community than any of us can on our own. And then there's the ledger. And the ledger sort of allows for this data integrity to be the foundation of who is saying what about where in relationship to what claim about ecological state, that in our sort of vision is really the building block for a new economy and a new way of generating value and sort of imbuing our economic system with ecological sentience and regeneration as one of the core principles for how wealth is actually generated. So this is just a quick overview, and I'm going to zoom ahead into sort of the meat of the matter around the community staking DAO process in just a moment. But this is just a broad overview of Regen Ledger. We're built with the Cosmos SDK. Our blockchain engineering team is the core maintainer of this fantastic tool that over 200 blockchains around the world are using. Over $100 billion is secured by the Cosmos SDK right now. Regen Ledger is just one little, currently little, domain-specific, application-specific blockchain dedicated to ecological health and claims and assets related to that ecological health. But it's used by many other people, crypto exchanges and decentralized finance applications. Many people are using the same application development kit that we're actually maintaining along with a community of other people. So I'm going to sort of skip over this. Cosmos is great. Yay. Happy to talk more about that in more detail. Now I want to get into proof of stake. Maybe people on this call aren't so familiar with even what I'm talking about when I'm talking about public blockchains and proof of stake. And there's a lot of context perhaps that's even missing from the way that I'm presenting this. So proof of stake is an alternative to proof of work. Everybody's probably seen the recent news about Bitcoin mining and energy challenges. And Bitcoin is basically using the energy of, a mid-sized country every year. That's a problem, right? That does not really jive with ecological regeneration and creating data integrity for ecological claims. So we're using a more advanced blockchain toolkit called proof of stake, which essentially virtualizes the mining process, like the ASICs mining process, in which you have computers algorithmically competing each other and running a competition to essentially secure the network and accrue block rewards. And that's what creates the sort of game theoretical security of the network. Instead, in proof of stake, that's been virtualized. Those tokens can then be staked on computers that aren't just running mad CPU processing to compete against each other, but are just servers who are maintaining the state, the data integrity of the network that can be called and written to, and it's a much more sort of sane way to create what in distributed systems lingo is called Byzantine fault tolerant data integrity in a community, in a network. And so that's kind of the foundation that we use to be able to then build the ecological applications and create tools for monitoring, reporting, and verification and asset issuance. So staking rewards accrue to people who have staking tokens and stake them on computers. If those computers misbehave in the network, those staking tokens are slashed. So that's why it's called being at stake, right? So there's this incentive to create availability and data integrity. And if you're seen to be out of integrity, people will lose tokens, right? So it isn't like passive. There's an active requirement for people to sort of be engaged in a way that is fairly active. These tokens also have the power to govern the network. And that means what is the executable application logic living on the blockchain, right? That's the primary thing. Do we have smart contracts related to CryptoKitties? Or do we have smart contracts related to ecological applications, for instance? And so the community that's securing the blockchain gets to make those choices. Okay. So community staking DAOs are the structure that we've created for 30% of the total allocation of the proof of stake tokens to be distributed to scientists like yourselves, indigenous people, landscapes. I was just talking with this amazing guy who wants to, have a microbial community represented, which is really exciting and kind of mind-blowing. So these are for stakeholders who aren't going to participate in buying and staking these tokens, but are sort of like the core constituency. This is really by us and for us. So this is the sort of texture of the conversation is to dig in a layer deeper around community staking DAOs, what they mean, and why it might be an exciting opportunity for Earthshot Labs. So I sort of said all of this. It's a third of the total tokens, which basically represents the ability to halt the network. If all of the community staking DAOs say something's going on that's not right, they have basically like a Byzantine veto on the network, which is really powerful, right? It's pretty exciting. I also think that it will basically create the vanguard of the leadership in terms of the decentralized community. So the vision, and we have flexibility about this, but the vision is that each one of these organizations is sort of a homogenous group, like scientists or ranchers. But there could be moments where people come together with a mission, and that might make sense too. So as I said, Earth tenders and land stewards, Earth observation scientists like the folks at Earthshot Labs. We wrote this. This is a slide deck from maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So we were already thinking about you all and hoping that we'd cross paths in landscapes. So again, the benefits here are participating in governance, which is a huge thing. This is public infrastructure built by and for the regenerative movement. And in exchange for governing and securing the network, you get block rewards. And those block rewards are, as I noted, between 7 and 20%. Annual inflation is accruing. Those could be either restaked or sold to fund projects, to reward people, to distribute amongst contributors. You also earn, every time there's a transaction fee, that's accruing to the stakers of the network. And as I said, there's some responsibilities in exchange for that. Governance features, we're just about to have a governance upgrade right now. So there's a vote that's about to go to enable transfers, for instance, and the community is debating and participating that there's on-chain governance tools to help. And also there needs to be more tooling built. This is all early days. So I'm gonna escape out here, and I'm just gonna have a quick look to see how I'm doing. And I think I'm going to stop sharing. I feel like I've been talking fast, and this is big. And I'm kind of unclear if I'm landing the appropriate context because it's a big group of people, and I don't really know where sort of folks are on the spectrum of crypto blockchain literacy. So I want to just take a pause and like tune in to everybody and see what I'm doing and maybe adjust to questions instead of continuing to talk.
Awesome. Thank you for that little intro, Gregory. People feel free just to press the raise hand button, or if there's not a whole bunch of rush, just unmute yourself and feel free to ask questions. Also asking questions in the chat. I have some questions as well if we don't get any in the chat, but let's start with feeling where people are at and what they're interested in.
I see one question here in the chat. So why Cosmos versus other platforms? Yeah, we vetted everything. We've been in Cosmos for a little while. The main, there's technical reasons, and then there's sort of philosophical reasons or ethical reasons. At the end of the day, I think it's the philosophical and ethical reasons that were the trump card in our case. Cosmos really believes in sort of sovereign interdependent blockchains and emphasizes interoperability. So instead of one giant blockchain, which sort of everybody uses, which is kind of the Ethereum model, the idea is to achieve scalability through different communities maintaining their own state machines or blockchains. And then having the inter-blockchain communication protocol, which is live, and there are blockchains communicating through it and transferring value to achieve sort of the scale. So this allows communities to have their own governance and their own sovereignty, but to interoperate with each other. And that sort of ethical and design stance, we actually feel is also technically superior because it allows for scalability, it allows for energy efficiency, and allows for us to optimize at the layer one, to innovate at the layer one solutions that meet our application requirements around how the whole system works. So that's the quick and dirty way of answering that question.
see Aaron's got a question.
Hi, Greg. Thank you so much for that kind of 150-mile-an-hour run through of kind of the process. I think this is extraordinarily interesting and very exciting. Maybe you could
Aaron,
take
you
a
wanna do
minute.
little intro, 30 seconds on yourself as well.
Sure. Data scientist. I work primarily on issues related to carbon and land cover. So feature extraction from LiDAR, spaceborne, terrestrial, et cetera, as well as spectral, multispectral analysis. I have a soft spot in my heart for deep learning and cellular automata. So question I have for you, I've worked in the past previously with groups like ARB, with different companies trying to register carbon offset projects onto some kind of a market. Maybe you could walk me through kind of just a story version of the process of how one would go about registering an ecological claim on the blockchain.
Sure, that's a great question. So step one is an estimate, right? So step one is, I think in any of these processes, is sort of making an estimate around the initial estimate around a carbon claim. And oftentimes that's used, there's a model that's saying, in this particular piece of Earth, we have this particular estimate about sort of the carbon dynamics. Step two, and this is sort of like the general process. At each checkpoint, there's the ability to basically attest or create an attestation up onto the blockchain using the data module. So for instance, that the model results can be signed up to the ecological data module. Okay, and then there's a baseline. So we're bringing in a baseline. So we're actually doing on the ground measurement to calibrate from the estimate, because through the estimate, we've decided this probably is going to make sense, but we need a baseline now to do that. The results of that baseline, however it's done, right? There's different ways, and we're very sort of like interested in innovative ways to do this. But for instance, with our projects in New South Wales, that baseline was, soil samples sent to labs that, and so, okay, so the farmer makes an attestation that they took, that when they, made a soil sample, there's the metadata of where was it sampled, and then who was it sent to, and then the lab. And this is sort of like the most, let's put it this way, this is the most rich version of the process. So if you want maximum auditability, every time someone is adding information to a claims process, they're going to be attesting to the information that they're making. So zoom down the line, you have a geospatial analyst who's maybe working in QGIS, who knows? So they're working in QGIS, they're assessing the Sentinel-1 data and looking for correlations with the soil samples that were taken, and then extrapolating that, and they find statistically significant correlation. They create a claim based on that. They're bundling that information and they're making an attestation, right? And according to the credit issuance logic, at a certain point, those attestations add up to an issuance event. That means that, and this is where there's flexibility in our system, right? You could have a centralized party who reviews that and says, thumbs up, credit issuance, or you could have a more decentralized sort of crowd-driven approach that says, once there's 5 corollary, pieces of evidence that are from, the following crowd, you have like an open issuance credit class, for instance. So that's just to like invite what the potential is. So hopefully I'm answering a little bit, I'm inviting the understanding of where the potential is and answering the question around, how does it work to be sort of like adding up attestations in the process of a claim and credit issuance.
Yeah, I think that was a good explanation. I have a better understanding for how you would go about interacting with the system. I have a follow-up question that I don't necessarily expect to be able to be answered in a super short time period. But one issue that I've found in working through any kind of basically credit monitoring system or carbon monitoring system for these kinds of claims is the issue of uncertainty. So,
Yeah.
so something I'd be really interested in is the relationship between, you know, your model-based uncertainty that's happening at, let's say you have a Jedi-based algorithm that you think does a pretty whiz-bang job of doing above ground living biomass, right? So you've got that, right? There's an uncertainty associated with that model. We send a crew down to the Amazon, we validate the model, we get some reference data, we have some actual field data to back that claim up. But even that field data is going to have some uncertainty associated with it. And so I'm really interested in how uncertainty is going to get carried around through the system.
This is the big question. I love that you asked that. I'm so excited. The science team is probably cracking up right now because I'm always like talking about my belief that transparent reporting about uncertainty is the most important thing. And that we could create any credit, like you could create a credit that says we're 10% certain. And if people know that and they still choose to like buy it, right, then that's enough. So it's actually like creating the rigor. So I was describing this what I refer to as an intersubjective verification process, where people are sort of like assembling claims with different data sources. A key to that succeeding is transparency around uncertainty. And people then can curate credit classes and by the level of uncertainty that they think is warranted by that particular asset class. So that means you can have very cheap but more uncertain credits, which I personally think are really important to get things moving. Like we need to not be messing around now. We need to be like, yeah, we're not that certain, but we're pretty sure that this is directionally correct. And then we also need like, hey, wow, this is as certain as we can get. Maybe it's still only 95% certain statistically, but I mean, we're pretty sure that this is, you know, and so it can be that the more certain it is, the more likely it is to be like a financial building block. The less certain, the more I think it can be used to catalyze and build real regeneration and be on the pathway to more certainty. So I think you're hitting the nail right on the head, and I'm very excited that that's, you know, that you're already seeing that and, you know, excited about it too.
Thank you very much.
I love this. I love this question because essentially what we're doing over the next 6 months is creating the estimation layer where, you know, for water, for soil, for forest, you do a first level estimation. And then with the biomap is essentially the lowest possible cost verification where sort of citizen scientists or individuals actually go do the verification rather than right now what happens is you pay someone from the US $300,000 to go spend 2 days in the forest and take some tape measure samples.
And it's maddening.
So
that thing can't happen. Exactly. I'm so excited that you're saying that, Troy. I mean, we're just really firmly in the same camp that we need to radically democratize the ability for citizens to participate in reducing uncertainty, and we just need to be like, yeah, we would love to see credits based on estimations. If there's a market for that and it can fuel intelligence to actually reward real things happening on the ground, we should be doing it yesterday, right? But we shouldn't be hand wavy about the uncertainty. We should be rigorous about the uncertainty, and we should invest in increasing certainty as a community. So we're all so on board with that.
Awesome. So I see a few more questions. Ben says, I'm newer to DAOs. So what do DAOs do for the Regen network? Like if you gave Earthshot Labs a big stake, like why would that be beneficial, or other groups of citizen scientists, or like what's the benefit of this?
The first thing is we need a bunch of people to work on the question that Aaron just brought up. Right? We need people to work on citizen science apps. We need all of the things that you're doing, and we need them integrated with what we're doing in order to have the vision of this like gradation of different credit approaches that actually moves human attention and capital to where it needs to fast enough, but also progressively calibrates and improves our collective sense making to get more and more rigorous as we go. And so we need that. We need that. And we also need land stewards to participate. So we're a network, not a company. And so we need community. And so that's the first thing that we need from you, that like we don't exist kind of without you in a way, I think is true to say. It's like having a party that nobody shows up to. So that's the one, that's the first. The second is, you know, there is literally this, if your organization holds the private keys to a set of tokens, those tokens are staked, they are securing the network. They're creating data integrity security. They're creating a censorship-proof ecological ledger for the globe. And like, we also need that. That's value. And in exchange for that value, you're getting income in the form of block rewards. And so there's a reciprocity there. And that's the second piece. And the third piece is we need the voices of experts and passionate people to help guide our blockchain to make the right development decisions and make the right upgrades so that we're actually serving, you know, the purpose. We can't pre-plan that. We have to sense and respond and be agile. And so we need community to provide us that information and that feedback. So those are the things that we need from our community staking DAOs.
Awesome. So there's still a lot of questions. Here's the thing. In the end, there will be way more questions than we can answer. But what I want to do right now is invite people to do like 30-second intros. Like who's on this call and where, and some people may be like, hey, I really want to be in on this conversation. Here's my passion and expertise. Maybe I have a question, maybe I don't, but just to feel who's in the room for a few minutes. And because we are going to have a working group on this theme. So part of the Slack channel, we'll have weekly calls, we'll write a proposal for the foundation, go through this process. So one, you know, hey, I want to be a part of that process, or I want to contribute something else. So just take a moment to see who's in the room. And also continue answering questions. Unless nobody's in the room. Feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like.
I'll go first since nobody else is, and I may be less relevant than other rock stars in this room. My name is Eric Gilberg. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Now City, which is designing resilient, regenerative neighborhoods as a product with the intent to scale 1,000-person neighborhoods across the US and beyond. And so we're looking at the same incentive structures for incentivizing participation in the initial design of our neighborhoods, trying to bring actual residents into that system and thinking about incentive programs that are similar to what you guys are doing. And then we also have this regenerative agriculture and local food production component that I hope will facilitate the work you guys are doing, but in the urban context. So that's where I am, and I'm really grateful to be part of this community. I don't know how I can help in the short term, except for to, you know, process what I see you guys are doing and think about how it applies in our urban context. So thanks everybody, you're awesome.
Nice, thanks Eric.
Maybe I'll jump in. Eric Wilbur, and I work for Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique. My kind of title is head of business development, but it's essentially how do we get funds to the ground to get 400,000 people out of abject poverty across 2.5 million hectares and protect and restore it. Carbon has been my main focus for the past year, as you guys can imagine, because it's a new revenue stream for funding nature. And I'm really fascinated, and I know a lot of the other groups that I work with who work with communities on the ground are fascinated by how we can get more finance coming in for protecting and restoring nature. And I guess I'll just, one note that might be particularly like curious is I'm working on developing a carbon cooperative right now of implementers, because I was just on the call with an investor today who is one of the more, I think, progressive investors. And they said, well, our structure is 15 to 35% going back to projects on the ground of any credit sold. And that just doesn't make any sense to me. given the opportunity with carbon and beyond. So really grateful to be a part of this group and any way that I can be of service. Last note, we're creating a climate lab in Gorongosa that hopefully will have a lot of capacity for doing different ecosystem pieces around carbon. So if that's a good resource, yeah, definitely love to connect. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Eric. Sounds like a great project and the work you're doing. Who else wants to do an intro?
I can do a quick intro from, I'm part of the Regen Network Development Science team. My name's Sophia. I'm joined here with Giselle Booman, our science lead, and Sam Bennett, and we make up the science team. I figured I would hop in really quickly and just state, if you have any questions along the science or the onboarding, what we're really working on is developing not only the methodology for creating carbon credits, but also looking at different ways to further decentralize and build this science community. So, working with the Earthshot experts in the field on forestry or crop methodologies, figuring out, how we can bring all these people together and just get more methodologies, even thinking beyond carbon. So we have a lot of different lanes we're working in right now, and I'll drop the science email in the chat. And if you have any further questions for us about different projects to potentially be onboarded, if you want to further collaborate on method development, if you have a really great idea for a nature-based solution, feel free to reach out to us and we can also get, further meetings and further discussions taking place. But just wanted to hop in and say our whole team's here and we're super excited to collaborate with all the good work that everyone on the call is doing.
Thanks, Sophia.
I'll go next. My name's Ben. I asked the question. Thanks for answering that question about the DAOs. Gregory, I'm new to the community. Thank you for having me. I am working on a project called Oko Crew, which is focused on making it easy for people instead of like businesses or governments to donate effectively to carbon projects. And so I vet carbon, projects like these and try to make it easy for, and then members contribute monthly. So it's like a monthly subscription anyone can give, and then that could be their kind of climate donation for the month. And new project started 6 months ago. So great to be here.
Nice, thanks, Ben. And for anyone else like representing organizations or projects, just go to the Earthshot Labs Slack channel, like write an intro, and it's not like we're trying to get all the credit for all your work. We just want you to find all the collaborators that you need for your project as well. So feel free to poach all the members and like get them involved in what you're doing too.
So hi to everybody. May I take the chance to step in now? I'm Martin from Austria, sitting here in Vienna at the quite late hour. And I really enjoyed the call. Thanks for the great presentation, Gregory. I'm son of a grazing dairy farmer, smallholder basis in Upper Austria, and then went my way to university, learning all this stuff about remote sensing and smart agriculture and the way to go and the new things. And yeah, I get even more skeptical now when I go back to university, because I think that's not the right direction we are looking for. And yeah, then I joined the community of Regen Network and also partly climate farmers in Germany, because I really think regenerative agriculture can be a chance to achieve a big change in agricultural production systems, not only in Europe, globally. And yeah, that's why I'm also quite interested in cryptos and blockchains for several years now. And I'm thinking now everything comes together a bit, and that's why I'm joining the community always more and using my free time to step in a bit. And yeah, that's my story.
Great, thank you. I just want to say we'll be posting and doing a follow-up, so we'll invite you all, or to the people that want to the working group. So if anyone's particularly interested, just message me on Slack if you definitely want to be part of that. working group to continue this conversation to actually work out the specifics. It was like, okay, so say Earthshot Labs does get a stake, and has a wish list of how we want to use the funds and how we want to participate in governments, etc. We also want to hear what your wish list is. Like, hey, actually, we think this particular project within the Earthshot community, maybe that's the biome app for citizen science-based verification, or maybe it's something else that we actually want to do, but we haven't done yet. Like, we're trying to find out where the resources want to go. So yeah, so if you want to be part of that, just send me a message.
Well, hi, everybody. I guess I'll go. My name is Misha Lepetic. I'm the co-founder of Project Canopy. We are working to bring better decision-making to environmental organizations working in and for the Congo Basin rainforest. We're a data platform looking to ingest and contextualize all sorts of different data sets about the Congo Basin, from the ecological layer to the direct and indirect drivers of deforestation, and basically functioning as a B2B service for environmental intelligence, where the other B is other organizations, whether they're local CSOs on the ground or donor governments in Northern Europe or international NGOs, campaigning organizations, things like that. We're still developing both technology partnerships and stakeholder relationships. We're working with WWF at the moment. And one of the things that I find really interesting about this conversation is, how do we kind of create a more robust governance framework around what we're trying to do? Because we're trying to get people's data, we're trying to do something with it, give people better analytics so that they can make better decisions. And we're thinking about framing this as a data cooperative or as a cooperative more generally. And then obviously the conversation naturally goes to blockchains and DAOs and things like that. Having said that, I dabbled in crypto in 2017, 2018. I co-wrote a couple of ICO white papers, got out of the space because it was a dumpster fire. And people had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know what I was talking about, but I knew that people did not know what they were talking about. So I still have great faith that this will work. And that's why I'm on the call. I'm here to learn from all of you. And I have great hopes in the future.
Great, thanks, Misha. I also want to hear maybe a bit more from Gregory. Like, okay, so in the next couple of weeks, the Earthshot Labs community is going to put this proposal together of like, hey, here we go get a big stake. Here's how we're going to use it. Like, what would you want to see? Like, what's your ideal sort of like partnership opportunity where like this is really what we want to fund? Just to hear a bit of context so everyone here like knows what to put in the proposal as well.
Yeah, well, so disclaimer, I'm like a evangelist and an advocate and a founder, but I won't be making the decision. So you can't sweet talk me. But what I want to see people talking about governance. I want to see people talking about data sovereignty and the right way to empower people who are generating data. I want to see experiments at the intersection between data commons and data markets. And when does it make sense to sell it? And when does it make sense to share it? And how are you going to create sharing permissions? Those are all things I'm excited about. I want to see, like data collection apps. I want to see uncertainty. I want to see uncertainty rating systems where there's actually sort of like, how do we quantify uncertainty for different types of claims? Like, what does that look like? Can we create a community standard around that everybody just knows this is how we're working to quantify our uncertainty and report on that uncertainty? I want that. I want, I want funding to go to, small agile teams of people working directly with the land and with smallholder farmers. I want, and some of this I think may rest within the Earthshot, like Earthshot Labs DAO. And my sense is there may be sort of nascent, communities as well that may say, oh, this actually also is an opportunity for us to sort of like be a sister DAO and cooperate. Like in Mozambique, we want farmers and land stewards and campesinos and peasants and villages to have representation and income from the work that they're doing. Otherwise, this whole thing is kind of like not really going to work, right? It has to be foundationally woven there. So I also want to see like inspired ideas or forums around those sorts of, pieces. I mean, gosh, I want a lot. So I'll probably be quiet now because hopefully it's a good set of hints.
Here's a very basic question, Gregory. How does the Regen ledger derive value? Like, who in the end pays for this? And how, so it's like, okay, we can go distribute a bunch of coins and things to farmers, but how do they actually get value for them? And how does that work? And how does that value increase over time?
Great question. So there's sort of two levels of this. So the generally network staking tokens, like the network utility token that secures the network and is used for transactions and governance, can be thought of as, its value can be thought of as like a derivative from or a multiplier of the amount of value that is, the amount of transactions, assets, and value that are secured by the data integrity layer. So if there's hundreds of thousands of transactions going on around eco-state verification and credit issuance, and there's, who knows, 1 million to start, and then 2 million, and then 50 million tons of carbon that's represented and being traded. There's sort of a relationship between the staking token that creates the data integrity layer that allows that to happen, and the value, like the next level up of value, and that is in transactions and governance. And so there's a relationship there, right? So that's where Regen really derives its.
Essentially mean, like, transactions could be, for example, corporates buying carbon offsets from farmers through
corporate.
the
So yeah,
system that you're proposing.
And in that scenario of a corporate buying carbon from farmers, there's a whole series of transactions. There's the transactions that are related to, like, the credit moving from the farmer's hands to the corporation's hands and then being retired. So that's like 3 transactions. But there's also the transactions that relate to hashing up the supporting data, where this data scientist created this bundle of data and, put it up in IPFS and hashed a link to it, or put it right on chain. It depends on the situation. This person verified that. And so those are all like microtransactions, right? Those are all meant to be as cheap as possible, but that's how it's like part of the circulating economy, right? And then there's the relationship between the asset value. How much is a carbon credit worth? Well, some of them are worth $5 and some of them are worth $100, but they're all being secured by the base layer. And so that Regen token also has a relationship between the value of the assets that are being minted and exchanged using the data integrity that those staking tokens are securing the network. They're providing the security, right, that allows for that data integrity. So that's like the fundamental sort of like basic economic logic of the value of Regen. And so at the moment, there's not a lot of stuff. I mean, we're issuing some credits on Regen. There's other people. This is a long, big vision process. There's no hype here. Regen is not going to be valuable unless we make it valuable. So it's so then the second part of the question is, how do you derive value? If you got Regen right now and you wanted to sell it, what would happen? Well, right now we're not listed on any exchanges, and we're quite happy about that, because as Misha said, crypto can be a bit of a dumpster fire. So you have to be careful about how to sort of proceed. So we're trying to have the highest integrity about how we create price discovery around the value of the regen tokens, and then liquidity around the value of regen tokens in such a way that it is sort of like clear, clean, transparent, and there is like a lot of community upside. And so the way we're approaching that is with a decentralized exchange first, sort of community driven liquidity, and then price discovery, and then it's going to sort of move out from there. So we're not doing a big hyped sort of like Binance, exchange offering, or a big public ICO to generate a bunch of money. We had a healthy private sale, right? So we raised $10.5 million from people who are like, this is great, I want this to exist, right? And then beyond that, we're not really taking any money out of the tokens, right? The rest of the tokens is distributed and sort of engaged with community members like yourselves. And we're also token holders. So our incentives at R&D Inc. is that we own tokens and we want them to be also valuable. And that's sort of our organization. That's our incentives. Our incentives are sort of transparent. We have 7.5% of the token supply at our business that we want those to be useful. And if they're not useful, those assets won't be worth anything, and our organization won't make any money. So that's the basic sort of like economic logic and sort of incentive structure that we hope is transparent and exciting enough for people to opt into and make their own, and sort of like co-create this network together.
Can I ask a really dumb question?
Go for it, Eric.
So just really quick. So there's a regen token. Are there all different kinds of tokens that can represent all different kinds of carbon offsets, all different kinds of ecosystem value? Is that
That's the vision. So there can be a Mozambique carbon token that so we have the credit module allows you to create a credit class that is unique. And that credit class can then have vintages. And those vintages come from a place, and they're associated with a methodology and like a particular approach to quantification. And so there can be as many credit classes and vintages as there are, as makes sense, right? And then we sort of think of it more as a grassroots, ground up. You design for the need instead of taking the top down. We want one credit standard for everything. And then people can create indexes. So you could assemble, and you could say, we're going to curate only for smallholder farmers, or we're going to curate only above a certain level of certainty, or we're going to curate only for riparian buffers or whatever. And then you can start to aggregate in those ways thematically instead of trying to sort of do the top-down approach. So we're really trying to create a platform in which people can innovate credit classes and agreement types in a way that fits the location, how expensive is it to generate the level of certainty you want? These are all questions we have to answer transparently, and we're sort of excited for more of a community-driven approach around all of this.
We're coming up to the end of the hour. So maybe just like reconnect to your intention for coming to this time. What was the interest? What was the excitement? And we'll continue this discussion on the crypto finance channel, the Slack link I sent in the chat. We have a working document that we'll be spending the next few weeks just creating this working document. Maybe there are crypto experts on this call, maybe there are domain experts, data scientists, other people who want to contribute. So we'll have a few calls, we'll write a proposal, and in general, looking forward to seeing you on the Slack. I am going to close the Zoom channel because I have another hard stop for another call. But it was really great to see you all, and I really appreciate Gregory, you showing up and giving us this overview, and also the invitation to out collaborate the competition. For me, that's something that will remain with you. It might be a meme, but it's also deeply true for the time that we are in right now. So thank you.
Thanks so much. Great to connect.